My son-in-law leaned back at dinner, glanced at my folding chair labeled guest, and sneered, "You're useless around here." I didn't argue. I folded my napkin, marked the oven clock in my head, and let years of quiet backbone do the breathing for me. By morning, I'd paused the mortgage draft and mailed a certified notice, no scenes, just children first support paid directly, and a paper trail that doesn't blink. That was only the opening move. The rest of this story is how calm boundaries made the loud ones scramble. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. The cul-de-sac was quiet when I pulled up porch lights, haloed by flurries. I balanced my green bean casserole like a peace offering and smelled takeout, not turkey. A Broncos flag snapped in the light wind. The mat said, "Welcome," but the kitchen island said otherwise, a crumpled Costco receipt under a stack of plastic forks. Isolde's wool coat hung on the rack, neighbor, present witness without trying. I slipped my gloves into my pocket, told myself to be gracious, and set the casserole down where steam rose from someone else's dinner. I looked for my place and found metal. A folding chair waited by the kitchen entry thin cushion and one leg that wobbled if you breathed wrong. A little tent card read, "Guest," printed in a tidy font that pretended not to judge. The real chairs circled the oak table like a jury. My corner faced the mudroom door and its steady draft. Heat rolled out of the oven, yet my seat lived in that seam where rooms meet. I straightened the card and the cushion as if neatness could steady the feeling. I measured the distance with my eyes, 2 strides from the sink, to me, 5 from me, to the table. Someone had set a patio pillow on the chair, the kind you buy in July and forget, by foul. Joanne pointed with the ladle and asked me to keep the gravy warm. Plates sailed past like little boats, none docked for me. I rotated the knob, skimmed a skin that kept forming, and listened to laughter ripple at a story I wasn't in. The timer beeped. I reset it with a thumb and a smile nobody saw. Steam fogged my glasses for a second, and the room cleared without me. The kitchen heat held me there steady as a hand on my back. Solarina floated between kitchen and table, checking platters, but never my eyes. Joran narrated the week like a foreman bills delays a tire the boss. His voice made the room smaller. Isolde's glance slid to my chair and back to her water, polite as a nod in church. The map of the room was clear center orbit edge. I sat at the edge and took stock, counting breaths instead of slights for now. The casserole sat untouched near the stove, a guest to a party that had already chosen a theme. Joran's laugh landed hard and shallow. Someone asked about football, and the question became a shield I could not step behind. I stayed small and useful, carrying the rolls I passed behind Joran's chair. He didn't lower his voice. He lowered me. "You're useless around here." He grumbled like the words were a fact he was tired of carrying. Flatware paused a glass, chimed the wrong way, and then the clink and scrape resumed as if sound could erase meaning. A roll slipped from the tongs back into the basket. I set the basket down anyway and felt every eye choose safety over me. Isolde blinked once and studied her water. My son looked at the gravy boat and said nothing. The air changed shape. It fit around me without touching me. I thought for one cruel second of the nights I paid their past due notice before the bank could stamp it red. I thought of the spare key I kept on my ring out of love and how it had become a leash. Joran reached for butter, not apology. Someone coughed. I let the sound pass through me and kept my face calm. I set a roll on my own plate and let the room decide who it was. I would remember me sat in the folding chair and let the insult land where it chose. One breath in, one out. I folded my napkin into a small square, set it on my knee, and took a single sip of water that tasted faintly of copper. I did not ask for a different chair. I did not defend my history. I chose stillness, the kind that gathers facts and waits. The room continued without me the way a river moves around a stone. In the quiet between sentences, I made a decision I didn't announce. I would not make a scene. I would make a record. I smiled when the children thumped upstairs and kept smiling when the laughter didn't include me. My wrists did not shake. The chair creaked once, and then learned my weight. This, I told myself, is what dignity feels like when no one is clapping for it. So, I let my eyes take pictures. My phone didn't. Oven clock 6:42, seating order Lorena, at the head Joran to her right, my son to her left, neighbor opposite him. Laughter after the slur, 2 chuckles, 1 throat clear, 1 silence mine. The gravy boat left a pale ring on the runner like a watermark. Isolde's phone lay face-up camera open to a short clip she'd meant for a story. The mic would have caught more than she planned. I memorized without moving. The draft from the mudroom traced my shins. The oven heat dampened my hairline. Joran asked for pepper as if asking for respect. Someone said the word budget and nobody looked at me. I could feel the scene scoring itself, time, place, words, witnesses. No photos, no texts, only the kind of memory that stands up when asked to swear. I kept breathing and adding it all up. I excused myself before dessert. Coat over my arm keys and my palm casserole returned to its lid. Lorena was busy with plates. Joran scraped a dish like it had wronged him. Isolde met my eyes and offered a small, careful nod that said I saw what I saw. The porch light threw a thin circle on the snow. My breath clouded once and then was gone. The cold helped me keep my face steady. The dashboard clock ticked past 7 as I pulled away. Tires whispered over packed snow. I kept both hands steady at 10 and 2 and let the radio stay off. In the quiet one line formed and set like plaster, I will not finance contempt. If they want my presence, they earn it. If they want my money, they respect the hand it comes from. I would act with paperwork, not noise, and I would not warn them twice. The neighborhood lights blurred at each corner and came back sharp at the next. I could already see the files I would open and the transfers I would close. My breath evened out. I drove the long way home on purpose. Then I aimed for home slow. I set my purse down on the kitchen table just after midnight, the house around me still and dark. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. One by one, I pulled out crumpled slips of paper, Costco King Soopers Safeway, each dated from the last month. I flattened them gently as though they were more than receipts, as though they were testimony. Each line item told its own story. Juice boxes the kids drained in 2 days' cereal, gone by morning chicken breasts cooked and praised, but credited to someone else. I took a pencil and drew small check marks beside the items I had bought, tallying totals without exaggeration. My hand moved steady, not bitter. No speeches, no sighs, just numbers. Invisible labor had a weight of its own, and tonight I was charting it not to complain, but to see clearly. I remembered how many times those slips had ended up in the household drawer at their house, shuffled among takeout menus and junk mail. No one ever noted who had paid, whose card had swiped, whose time had been spent hauling bags in the cold. In that drawer, names vanished. Paid by was always left blank. I wrote the phrase in my notebook, a single line underlined twice. Not a lament, not an accusation, just fact. Facts endure in ways feelings don't. By morning, the casserole dish I had carried the night before sat rinsed by the sink. I packed paper towels and a gallon of milk into a bag, a small courtesy drop-off for the kids. The drive over was quiet. Light snow dusted the cul-de-sac. I rang once stepped in, left the bag on the pantry shelf. Joran's voice floated out, polite loud. "Oh, you didn't have to." The words were fine, but the tone reminded me of someone brushing crumbs from a table. I smiled once short, then excused myself. As I turned, I noticed the household drawer ajar. Receipts again neatly stacked but unsigned. My fingers nudged the pile square. No comment, no claim, no fuss. Just memory. The date, the time, the location lodged in my mind as neatly as if I had photographed it. This was my ledger now. In the dining area, Lorena's phone lit up. A banner flashed across the glass family core. Dinner recap. She palmed it quickly, pressing the screen dark. I looked away before she could meet my eyes. That was enough. Exclusion didn't always shout. Sometimes it only blinked once across a screen, and if you caught it, you caught the truth. At the entryway, small talk pricked like nettles. "Did you get home safe?" Lorena asked, voice light, eyes busy. I said yes. Joanne mentioned keeping things simple for the holidays, words dropping like stones into water. I offered one neutral sentence in reply, nothing more. The less I gave them to twist, the clearer my path would remain. In my car, the engine warming against the cold, I tallied the grocery runs aloud. 4 times in 30 days staples for children, weighed against indulgences for adults. My pencil underlined the difference back at home. Who benefited, who credited, who erased the pattern came into view stark and steady. I closed the notebook with a quiet snap. No texts, no calls, no confrontation, not yet. A reminder note waited for me. Bank statements next step, but not tonight. Tonight I left myself one sentence written in careful script across the page. I won't fund contempt. I will fund children. The words hardened like ice, and in that stillness I felt stronger than I had the night before. Steam curled off my coffee like a small flag of truce. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook open to last night's words, paid by blank, family core, and let them sit beside the mug the way truth sits beside appetite. The house was so quiet I could hear the clock in the hallway keeping its ordinary promises. Humiliation wasn't a single insult at a crowded table. It was a system, a folding chair when there were real seats, a guest card in my own family, a ledger that erased the name that actually paid. I traced my pencil under the sentence I'd written, I won't fund contempt. I will fund children. It landed in my chest like a keel, something that would keep me straight even if the weather turned worse. I rinsed the cup, dried it, and carried the notebook down the hall. In my small office, I turned on the lamp and the laptop. The screen came alive, patient as a clerk. I signed into the bank and opened the mortgage history. Lines of dates, amounts, and confirmation numbers stacked like neat bricks. I took screenshots, each one labeled automatically with today's date and the minute. Nov 1-2:07 p.m. Mortgage posted. OCT 1-11 p.m. Mortgage posted. Utilities sat in their own column. Gas, electric, water. Each drafted from my account, each steady as sunrise. Time is a witness that never raises its voice. I added parallel notes by hand, writing the times in pencil, so the page felt like paper evidence, rather than outrage. I didn't imagine an audience. I imagined a file. The printer hummed to life, warm and practical. I printed 3 months of statements and slid them into clear sleeves. A label maker clicked out a strip Household 2023 paid. I pressed the label onto a sturdy manila folder and felt something slow and centering move through me, the opposite of shaking. Every month here spelled my name in full, while last Friday spelled me useless. It would almost be funny if it hadn't stung so cleanly. I placed the folder upright in the drawer beside my passport and the deed to my house. Those papers kept my address safe. These would keep my spine safe. My phone lay face down on the desk. I flipped it over, knowing what I would find: no message from Lorena, no thank you for the paper towels and milk. In the shared album, a new photo showed the kids at the park. The caption mentioned family and a heart emoji. The circle was complete without me. I didn't tap like. I didn't tap anything. Instead, I made one more capture time date image, then set the phone face down again as if I were setting down a card I didn't need to play yet. Some indictments don't require an audience. They require a calendar. I carried the folder to the car and sat in the driveway where the sun had turned the windshield into a bright sheet. The robocalls could wait. This one could not. I dialed the bank and listened through the menu until a live voice arrived, kind and efficient. I asked about a pause option on the automatic draft. Yes, ma'am, the agent said you can halt one cycle with a written confirmation. It will not affect your credit. It will simply not post this month. I looked at the little maple in my front yard, its last leaves holding on. Please note my account, I said, and she read back the date and time of the request. There it was again. Time standing beside me, arms folded, ready to testify. I thanked her, ended the call, and let the quiet return. No anger, just the relief of choosing a door and walking through it. Back inside, I opened my paper planner, the one with a blue cloth cover I've carried since Harold passed. Under December, I wrote in small, deliberate letters, "Mortgage draft on hold." 2 underlines. I added a note for later review trust account. That was for another day, another kind of boundary. Today was about one clean line and the steadiness to keep it. I closed the planner and smoothed the cover with my palm the way you smooth a child's hair before school. The afternoon asked me to move my body, so I walked the sidewalk loop around our cul-de-sac. Dogs announced themselves from living room windows. A mail carrier lifted 2 fingers in greeting. The air had that particular Colorado clarity that makes everything look slightly more honest. I considered how easy it would be to text a paragraph to explain the insult at the table, the receipts, the drawer with no names. I didn't. My silence is not absence. It is strategy. It is the difference between heat and light. Heat flares, light records. Back home before dusk, I aligned the day's work on the bedroom desk. Receipts, bank prints, a few photographs of screens. The folder waited like a slim, loyal ally. I wrote one last line across the bottom of my notes: "Contempt cannot be mortgaged." The sentence looked like a rule because it was. I turned off the lamp and stood in the doorway long enough to feel the room remember me. No calls, no warnings, no speeches. The maple scratched the window with its last leaf, and I went to bed, not triumphant, not bitter, just clear. I opened the folder I'd labeled last week, Household 2023, paid, and set it on the desk. The planner waited beside it, December flagged with a small paper tab. Under the date I had written December payment on hold, I read the words aloud, once not for drama, but for alignment. Today wouldn't be speeches. Today would be trail-making dates, numbers, acknowledgments that don't argue back. In the office, I put the phone on speaker and dialed the bank. The hold music stitched itself into the room's quiet until a woman answered. I verified my information and asked her to confirm the stop payment instruction on the mortgage draft. "Yes, Ms. Hale," she said. "I see a temporary halt authorized for the upcoming cycle. I requested written confirmation and a case number." She read it back slowly, and I repeated each character, writing it on a yellow sticky and inside the folder. When I ended the call, the room felt newly measured. My email chimed. The subject line carried what I'd asked for: confirmation, stop payment. A timestamp sat in the corner like a small witness. I printed the email and the most recent statement and clipped them together with a note: today's date, the time down to the minute, the agent's first name. Those pages slid into a subfolder I titled Notices, Sent Received. Paper doesn't forget. I drafted a 1-page notice on my letterhead, Notice of Change, Involuntary Support. I kept it plain. I stated that as of the next cycle, I would no longer contribute to the household mortgage or non-essential expenses. I wrote that my support going forward would be limited to the children's direct needs. No accusations, no adjectives, no lectures about last Friday or that folding chair, just boundaries and an effective date. I saved a PDF, then copied the text into a brief email with a read receipt turned on. I paused to check my tone: firm, not sharp, clear, not cruel. 2 channels, 1 message. I hit send and watched the outbox empty itself. Then I slid the printed letter into an envelope, addressed it, and drove to the post office. At the counter, I asked for certified mail with return receipt. The clerk slid the green card across, and we filled it out together. I bought the postage, the tracking, the sturdy sense of custody. When I handed the sealed envelope back, she stamped the receipt and tore it off with a practiced rip. I put the receipt in my wallet and kept the tracking slip in my planner. Back home, I opened the folder and taped the USPS receipt to the inside left. Below the bank case number, I wrote the tracking number, underlining both. On a clean sheet, I drew a 3-step line bank email certified mailing return card. If asked for the why or when, I would point to ink. The quiet in my house did not feel empty. It felt arranged. There was a knock. Isolde stood on my porch, in a down coat, a casserole pan. "Do you have a square baking pan I can borrow?" she asked. I found one and passed it to her. On the step, we traded small talk about weather and sidewalk salt. She hesitated, then glanced at me the way people do when they want to be kind without trespassing. About last week, she said carefully it felt Awkward. That was the word she chose, and it was the right one. I didn't invite commentary and offered none. I only nodded because a neutral truth from a witness needs no garnish. I took a short walk around the block. The winter air was dry and clean. 2 houses down, a terrier announced my existence. I tried a line in my head and kept it. I enforce boundaries, not punishments. The distinction steadied me. Boundaries protect what you value. Punishments prove what you can ruin. I value my peace, my savings, and my access to my grandchildren. I don't intend to ruin anyone. I intend to stop bankrolling rudeness. Back on the porch, I slid the USPS stub under a fridge magnet. Beside it, I left an empty space for the green card that would arrive when the letter met the right hands. The space felt like a small promise. I reviewed my plan for what might come next. If I was confronted in a doorway or on a phone, I would answer with the case number, the dates, the receipts. No debates. If someone tried to move the conversation into the past, I would return it to the present tense of documents. The mail brought coupons and a holiday catalog performing abundance. I set them aside. On a fresh sticky note, I wrote the sentence that has become my north: I won't fund contempt. I will fund children. I tucked it into the front of the folder so it would be the first thing I saw next time I opened it. Then I set the folder on the desk corner where the afternoon light could find it. I did one more pass through the house, watered the plant in the kitchen window, and stood for a minute with my hands on a chair, feeling how solid wood can be when you aren't the one asked to fold. I made tea and watched the steam fade against the window, counting breaths to 10. Discipline is a kind of kindness to myself, and today I practiced it on purpose. Calm. Nothing in me wanted a fight. Everything in me wanted order. Certified silence is still silence, but it leaves a trail to follow. I switched off the lamp and let the room keep its new geometry. Somewhere across town, a notification would blink on a screen, and a letter would begin its short journey through the sorting center's belts. Here in my small, steady house, I was finished for the day. The porch was pale with frost when I opened the mailbox. My envelopes were ordinary utility, a church newsletter, a flyer promising holiday gutter cleanings. Across the street, the USPS truck eased into the cul-de-sac like a patient animal. I checked my planner and wrote the time. If the lender's cycle ran the way it usually did today, would be the day paper, began saying what I'd already told them. My support was voluntary, and it had changed. Back inside, my phone gave a soft buzz. The USPS tracking page refreshed gray bar turning green. Delivered. A scrawl of a first name appeared beside signature captured. I copied the number onto a sticky, then slid it into the notices. Sent received pocket. The satisfaction wasn't triumph. It was order. One channel completed one less thing living only in my head. On my grocery run, I passed their street slow enough to take the corner safely, not slow enough to loiter. At their mailbox, a red-banded window envelope sat stubbornly in the slot, the kind every adult recognizes. I did not stop. I did not take out my phone. I let the detail imprint itself the way a sunprint fixes on paper position, color the torn corner of a catalog tucked behind it. That was enough. At home, my screen lit with a preview bubble. Lorena, hey mom, can we talk? I let it roll off the edge of the phone and disappear. I am not unkind, I am clear. Talking without terms would invite old gravity to pull me back into the same orbit. Boundaries first, then conversations, if conversations are needed. The phone rang twice more. I set it face down on the table and listened to the machine collect what it wanted to collect. When the silence returned, I pressed play. Joranne's voice came through hot and crowded. You've messed with our mortgage, call me back now. Volume, not fax. The message time-stamped itself, then another shorter one followed. More breath. Less bark. I forwarded both to my archive and typed the times into my notebook. Pressure recorded is pressure tamed, paper not posture. I printed the USPS delivery proof and the carrier scan page, then stapled them to my copy of the notice from yesterday. On a small cover slip, I wrote delivered date time signature on file and initialed it. If a storm gathered later, I wanted a roof that didn't leak. Chain of custody is a roof. I opened the lender's public page and read the late cycle terms line by line. It was a familiar ladder of fee after a set number of days a letter, then a next letter. No drama, just a system that does not care about family holidays or hurt feelings. I underlined one sentence in my planner. Their duty, quis theirs. My support, voluntary. The equation steadied me. Equations don't raise their voices. By evening, the sky had thinned to that blue that almost whistles. The phone blinked with a second voicemail from Joanne. The words were tighter, not kinder. I registered the shift and let it pass like noting wind direction. In the kitchen, I stirred a pot of lentil soup and listened to my house breathe the furnace, exhaling the clock, keeping its small promises. I have lived through louder winters. On the neighborhood app, a thread bloomed about delayed mail and those bank letters. I closed it after one glance. I'm not fishing for reaction. I'm building a record. The goal is not to win an argument, only to stop being drafted into one. I set the day's stack on my desk, proof of delivery atop the notice voicemails, logged the sticky with the tracking number aligned under the bank's case number. The pieces fit without force. Through the window, I could see my porch light, pooling on the steps, the way it did when my kids were small, and I waited for the car to turn in headlamps' two bright eyes. The memory was warm, and it hurt a little, like a hand that's been asleep and starts to wake. I rinsed my bowl and dried it, then wiped the counter so it was clean for morning. My phone stayed face down. If Lorena tried again tonight, my answer would be the same tomorrow as it was today. I don't argue with people, I argue with paper. Paper is patient. Paper is exacting. Paper is how adults remember the truth when their feelings try to edit it. Before I went upstairs, I stepped onto the porch and breathed the thin cold. On the next street, a garage door rumbled. A dog barked twice and quit. I pictured the red notice opening the shuffle that follows calculator out, excuses forming someone blaming the mail. Dignity isn't delighting in a stumble. It's choosing where your name does and doesn't belong. Inside, I wrote a card and clipped it to the folder. If asked, respond with dates, amounts, confirmations. Do not explain feelings. When people want your reaction more than your answer, they're not seeking a solution. They're seeking fuel. I am done being combustible. The kids stayed in my mind as I locked the door. Their needs are simple breakfast boots that fit heat that works while they sleep. Those lanes I will still drive. Everything else belongs to their parents where it should have lived. That isn't cruelty. It is adulthood. Yes. I cleared the breakfast plates and set the laptop on my kitchen table. The folder labeled Household 2023. Paid weighted like a quiet witness. I dated a fresh page and drew 2 columns. Plan download the last 90 days sort by groceries, utilities, and everything else. No speeches, just numbers which don't roll their eyes. Outside, pale Saturday light slid across the fence. Inside, I chose steadiness over sting. I clicked into the bank, the cursor patient breathing even. The voicemail from Joanne could sit in its folder. It wasn't invited to this table download stacked in my browser like neat cards. I sorted by week, then by category. 4 Fridays matched my grocery runs. The totals told a plain story. When I paid in-store, their debit trail for Staples dipped. The same 7 days, another column swelled electronics drive-through, late-night delivery. I circled dates not from spite, but to outline a habit. Relief entered one door. Indulgence slipped out the back. I underlined the pattern and kept moving. In the margin, I listed who benefited and who paid. Credits floated toward smiles. Costs floated toward my account. Facts, not feelings, went in the ledger too. Buried among groceries and gas were codes that didn't feed children DFS SBK parlay. They looked small on their own 5 here, 20 there, but the week totals stacked like bad weather. I copied each line into a column labeled non-essentials while requesting help. Next to it, I added that week's grocery receipt from my folder. The contrast did the talking. Staples landed on my card. Risk leapt from theirs. I dated every entry and let the sums add themselves. I need no betting to understand consequences. Money is a language, and this dialect said, when someone buys potatoes, you buy chances. I stepped away from the table and stood at the living room window. The neighbor's spruce held last night's frost like sugar. I let my shoulders drop. No rage, no pity, just recognition. My help had created room they chose to fill another way. The realization didn't ask for a speech. It asked for better stewardship. I poured tea, returned to the chair, and opened the next tab. The house was quiet enough to hear the heat click on. Quiet is where I make decisions. Quiet is where I stop mistaking kindness for a mess. On a shelf by the table sits the kid's old iPad, the one I keep for drawing apps and calls. I woke the screen to clear a notification, and a bright banner slid across, "Pay in 4" on kitchen gear. The ad wasn't mine. It was theirs, carried through shared logins like a scent on a coat. App history showed searches for sheet pans, smoker accessories, a specialty thermometer. Not wicked things, just want stacked on needs on the very weeks I covered groceries. I wrote BNPL prompts observed with the time and let the jolt soften into sorrow. Ads adjust to behavior. The tablet told our story without judgment. I closed the cover and kept the note. Proof is proof when you're funding boundaries. Yes. Back at the table, I aligned the timestamps. The BNPL ad impressions clustered within hours of non-essential charges. The sportsbook debits climbed on the very weekends my card covered staples. I drew arrows, then erased them. The lines were obvious without a flourish. When relief shows up, risk takes the wheel. There it was in columns, quiet and repeatable. I underlined one sentence: relief money becomes risk money. I dated the page and closed the pen. I am not a court, only a boundary. I won't fund a habit that shrinks the pantry today. Enough. Up before lunch, I packed a small bag of preschool supplies, their markers, glue sticks, wipes, and drove 4 minutes to Lorena's. I rang once, kept my smile even, and handed the bag at the doorway. For the kids, I said. Nothing about money, nothing about voicemails. Just the lane I'd chosen, care for children, silence for adult choices. She thanked me. I said I had errands and left. The visit lasted under a minute. I stepped back, waved once, and left the porch. On the drive home, the radio stayed off, slight warmth. I nod. Back home, I drafted a 2-page ledger. Page 1, staples I covered against the same week's non-essentials. Page 2, sportsbook and DFS totals with dates. No commentary, no arrows, only columns that behaved. Facts stand up better without makeup. I totaled each group and wrote the sentence the columns implied: when I fund basics, other spending grows. I printed the pages, slid them into a sleeve marked fact sheet, draft, and set the sleeve beside the folder I'd kept since fall. I wasn't ready to send it. Evidence should travel at the right speed to the right room. I chose paper over texts. If asked, the numbers would talk. I won't late afternoons settled along the baseboards. I closed the laptop and smoothed the page with today's totals. There would be a time to show this, but not tonight. The right move now was to guard the line between care and enablement. I filed the printout, switched off the lamp, and stood in the doorway. Relief is not a subsidy for disrespect. It's a lifeline for children and a test for adults. I locked the door and let the quiet hold. The papers waited in their sleeve. If a storm came, I had walls. No speeches, no scene, only a course I could walk tomorrow the same way I walked it today, steady. Lorena brought the kids over on a Sunday that smelled like cocoa and wet wool. She said she had an errand, nothing big, and the door closed with a careful click. I kept the television off and set 2 mugs on coasters. Snow hummed against the window screen. We built a tower from wooden blocks. I didn't ask questions meant for adults. I asked about Mitten's spelling tests, the book with the owl. When the blocks tumbled, the older one went to my side table and pulled at the paper and crayons I always leave there. She drew with her lips pressed serious as a librarian. The younger hummed and lined up cars by color. I wiped a cocoa ring and returned to the rug. The drawing took shape, a rectangle, tiny circles for plates, a long table with chairs all around. My mouth went dry before I knew why. "Grandma here," she said, placing the paper in my lap. I recognized the doorway sketched in brown, the little square for a chair tucked near the edge. She'd drawn me smaller than the others near the kitchen door, the chair without arms. A quick stroke for a folding seat. Children report what they see. I smoothed the paper and kissed the crown of her head. I told her the table was lovely and I kept my voice low. We colored for a while. I added a bowl of rolls to the center. She added a window with dots of snow. When the timer I had set for the oven beeped, it was just muffins for later. I turned it off and stayed right there. I do not leave warmth for the sake of usefulness anymore. The truth had been handed to me in wax and paper. I tucked the drawing on the mantel to dry. I brewed tea and wrote one line in my notebook, "Anchor the children's stability." The words steadied me like a handrail. Every decision will pass through that gate. I will not fund adult appetites. I will not be baited into debates in rooms that forget who eats first. Health school coats teeth. That is the lane. The hope I keep is not for apologies that arrive like weather. It is for steady mornings where the little ones recognize their routines. Lorena returned before the hour. She stood in the doorway with wind on her cheeks, polite, a little hurried. We swapped hats and mittens, the tiny backpack with the dinosaur keychain. "Thank you," she said. "How were they warm?" I answered and let the rest stay unspoken. She glanced toward the mantel and then away. I asked about pickup on Tuesday. She gave me the time. The kids waved and clomped down the steps. The door closed on a draft that smelled like cold metal. After the house shook off the visit, I set my kitchen table for the work it does best, the 2-page ledger from yesterday on the left, a blank sheet on the right headlined Support Framework. I dated the page. I drew 2 lists, what I will fund, what I will not. In the first column, I wrote children's groceries, winter boots, prescription refills, dental visits, school fees, counseling copays, paid directly to vendor. In the second column, no cash transfers, no debt service for adults, no takeout. Terms belong on paper, not in tones. I began with the thing that made all this necessary. Condition 1. A written apology for the public insult, "You're useless around here," acknowledging harm delivered privately without theatrics. I will not stage forgiveness like a spectacle, and I will not accept silence dressed as civility. Condition 2. Financial separation, no joint cards. Each adult pays their own debts. Show me only the receipts that involve children, and we can talk about timing. I move to accountability. Condition 3. 8 weeks of GA meetings or certified counseling focused on gambling and money boundaries with weekly proof, simply dates and signatures. Condition 4. A hard stop on sportsbook DFS or any gambling-adjacent charges. 1 violation pauses support for 30 days. 2 end it for the season. Scope and method support is in kind, not cash. Paid directly, tracked by date and need. The language felt dry and right. Dignity is not a synonym for softness. I printed a clean copy and signed my name with the slowness I reserve for documents I intend to keep. I drafted an email subject line, boundaries and support for the children. The body stayed short and plain. Here are the terms under which I will continue helping with the kids' needs. This is not punishment, it is structure. Read receipt on attachments, ready draft, saved not sent, paper first, then pixels. I clipped the printed copy into notices, sent, received. Night pressed against the windows. I took the crayon drawing from the mantel and set it beside the signed terms. The little chair by the doorway looked up at me. I traced its outline with one finger, not to erase anything, but to promise the child who drew it that adults can learn. I said softly, "This is for you," and slid the paper into a clear sleeve. Then I wrote a final line in my planner, "Deliver terms, not please." I turned off the lamp. The house breathed like a patient animal. Tomorrow could bring noise. I am ready for that. My answers will be simple. Yes for the children, no for the rest, and a door that stays on its hinges. The hope anchor holds because I chose it. I folded the email draft and left the kitchen as if leaving a chapel quiet, steady, grateful for a bench that teaches posture. Some things need only to be written to begin working. I placed the notebook by the kettle. Resolve would greet me first thing tomorrow. Monday, light came in flat and honest, the kind that makes dust and truth show up together. I set my glasses on my nose and opened the email draft I'd prepared last night. The subject line stayed the same: boundaries and support for the children. I attached 2 files, the signed framework and a 1-page list of facts gathered in quiet. Before I touched send, I breathed the way nurses do before a difficult IV. Then I read every line again for tone and commas, for steadiness more than heat. When the sentences held, I let my shoulders drop and waited a heartbeat. Now, the 1-pager looked like any practical instruction sheet you might tape inside a pantry door. Dates, amounts, the bank's case number, the certified mail tracking code, a column titled "What Stops" and one titled "What Continues." No adjectives. I am done using weather words to describe choices. In the margin, I had typed 1 sentence in 12-point type. Children are funded direct to vendor. Adult expenses are not. That is not a threat. It is plumbing. Before I could send, my phone pinged with a screenshot from a friend who knows how to read timing. Joanne had posted one of those vague messages online, the kind that borrows virtue from fog. Some people forget family when it's inconvenient. No names, but a breadcrumb trail any neighbor could follow. I filed the image in a folder labeled "External Noise" and typed a note underneath "Keep public silence. Answer privately with facts." I hit send to Lorena and Joanne only. No CCs, no BCC, no audience. The first line of the message was plain: for clarity and the children's stability. Here are the facts and the terms under which I will continue support. At the bottom, I wrote that any discussion would be by appointment, not by text skirmish. I will not negotiate in hallways or comment threads. I will sit at a table with paper and leave with paper. Lorena asked for 5 minutes at the cafe on Colfax, a place with soft lamps and the sound of milk steaming. She arrived with hair pulled into a clip and a tone meant for small, safe subjects. I let her start. "I'm sorry you felt things got tense," she said, shaping each word like it could be edited later. I stirred my tea and let the spoon rest. "This isn't about feelings," I answered. "It's about a statement made out loud and the changes that followed. I will accept a written apology for the remark. I will support the children by paying vendors directly. That is all." She asked if I could bridge this month anyway, just to keep peace. I slid the 1-page sheet across the table like a menu. Here is all I will do. Vendors only. Groceries for the kids. Co-pays. Boots. If the conditions are met, this continues. If they are not, it pauses. That's not punishment. That's boundary. She looked down, then away, then back. Her fingers traced the bold line that read, "Respect requirement." I did not fill the silence for her. When I returned home, the read receipts blinked. Joanne had opened the email twice within 15 minutes. Another post appeared softer this time. Families should talk, not punish, and there was the word he wanted me to argue with. I archived the image without comment. I refused to audition for roles I didn't choose. I printed the sent email confirmation and clipped it behind the paper copies. I wrote the time of the cafe meeting on a small square and tucked it beneath the top binder clip. My porch bell rang. Lorena stood there with an envelope I'd prepared earlier. I handed it to her without ceremony. "For your records," I said. The neighbor from 2 doors down passed with her dog and nodded at us. We nodded back like women in a weather report. The door closed, the house returned to its natural volume. Evening slid in with a sky the color of paper ash. I made soup and washed the pot and put the 1-page sheet on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a pear. My notebook took the day's last sentence. "I won't debate feelings over facts." The phone stayed face down. Somewhere across the subdivision, someone was asking a screen to agree with them. I prefer signatures. I set a reminder for later in the week. If terms are accepted in writing, schedule a sit-down with paper. If not, proceed to the next right step without commentary. My hands smelled faintly of onions and printer ink. I thought of the crayon drawing on the mantel, the little chair by the doorway, and I told the empty room that we will not repeat that picture if I can help it. Children learn from seating charts, so do adults eventually. Before bed, I wrote a card for the refrigerator the way my mother labeled shelves when winter came 3 lines in my neat teacher's script. For the children, yes. For adults, vendors only. For disrespect, no. I am not interested in punishment that teaches nothing. I am interested in boundaries that let small people feel safe as big people choose better. If that sounds cold, it is room temperature air that keeps tempers even. I slid the card under the pear magnet beside the 1-page sheet and turned the kitchen light to low. Tomorrow would not need speeches. It would need proof and hands steady enough to hold it. The house finally cooled. I turned off lamps, left the kitchen, and let the quiet do its job. Somewhere in the stack by my desk, the 1-page answer waited like a lighthouse bulb, steady, small, bright enough. I do not need to be loud to be clear. I just need to be consistent, and I am. I reserved the glass-walled room like I would a doctor's appointment on time, prepared and unafraid to walk out if disrespect arrived first. The whiteboard read in block letters, Terms Meeting, 6/06/30. I laid out 3 pens, a slim binder, my 1-page fact sheet, and the support framework they'd already received. On a folded card, I wrote the rules, 1 speaker at a time. Facts, not feelings, 30 minutes. First insult ends the meeting. I set my phone face down airplane mode. I wanted a conversation with edges, not a scene. Lorena arrived at 5:59, eyes scanning the hallway, as if the corridor itself might take sides. Joranne came on her heels, jaw set, shoulders set for a fight that would not happen here. I gestured to the chairs. I pointed to the rules and said, "We'll follow these." He smirked. She swallowed. I kept my hand still on the table and waited for the minute hand to lift its thin arm to 12. "Here's what this is," I said when the clock clicked. Support for the children continues paid directly to vendors. Mortgage support remains paused until 4 conditions are met. A written apology naming the disrespect. Financial separation. 8 weeks of GA or counseling with verification. And no gambling. I met each gaze once. Questions will come after documents. "You blindsided us," Joranne cut in, voice striking the glass. I lifted the rules card with 2 fingers and tapped the line about turns. "You'll have 5 minutes after the binder," I said. Lorena blew out a breath. "No drama," she murmured. "Good," I said. 26 minutes left. She tried first. "I'm sorry things got tense," Lorena offered, palms up. I did not blink. The words were, "You're useless around here," I said evenly. The apology must name the harm to repair it. In writing. The silence that followed was not a victory. It was simply space where an adult could choose truth. Neither spoke. The clock moved. I opened the binder and let paper do what my temper would not. Page 1, the bank's case number and the timestamp stop payment notice printed with the header bar and the agent's initials. Page 2, USPS certified receipt tracking printout and the signature confirming delivery. Page 3, 2 pages of ledger's columns marking weeks I bought staples for the children against the same weeks of restaurants' gadgets and sportsbook charges. The totals were not theatrical, they were arithmetic. I slid the binder to the center and rested my palm beside it. Joranne leaned forward, a finger already rising to jab a total. I raised a single hand and pointed to the clock. "Your turn is coming," I said. He sat back, not from agreement, but from the room itself. Glass a library, a rule written in black marker, 2 feet from his shoulder. He could rage somewhere else. Here we were, boring on purpose. I placed a single sheet on the table, clean and blunt, GA counseling attendance verification. 8 lines for 8 weeks signature date contact. Behind it, a list of local meetings. Behind that, an addressed envelope to me. When the first date is signed, I resume children-only support as outlined groceries, co-pays paid to the store or provider. Any gambling charge voids that week. You control the outcome, I said. Lorena read the form twice. Joranne said, "We don't need that." I circled no gambling with a slow pen and let the ink dry. Their 5 minutes came. He took 3 and spent them on grievance, how hard work had been. How unfair banks were. How family should cover family. Family is not a subsidy for contempt, I said when he stopped for air. I will not fund disrespect. I will fund children. Lorena's 2 minutes were softer worry about the winter, about lunches, about the mortgage notice. 2 sealed grocery cards are ready, I said, laying down 2 small envelopes labeled A and B. They open when the apology arrives and the first GA line is signed. Lorena slid a nail under the flap of envelope A, then stopped. I can write something, she murmured. Name it, I said. Her eyes shifted to Joran, then back to the floor. The pen stayed capped. The room held us all to what was on paper and what wasn't. I filled out the outcome slip, printing each word so I could live with it later. Terms restated. Documents reviewed, apology pending, GA counseling proof pending, no gambling clause acknowledged. I signed and dated it. Would you like a copy, I asked? Joran shook his head. Lorena half reached, then pulled back. I slid the slip into my folder. 6:30. I said, standing. I collected the binder, the rules card, the 2 unopened envelopes. If you meet the conditions, you know how to reach me. If you don't, you still know how to reach the meetings. I opened the door. Library air ink carpet winter coats moved through the frame. I let them walk out first. No one raised a voice in the hallway. The clock in the lobby said exactly what the whiteboard said it would. Outside, dusk held the parking lot in a blue bowl. I paused at the curb and let the cold touch my face. Silent lines aren't drawn to punish. They're drawn so love has edges and children have heat. I put the binder on the passenger seat and the envelopes back in my bag, still sealed, still possible. Then I drove home steady hands at 10 and 2, the library shrinking in the rear view until it was just a warm square of light in a town that will keep turning, whether or not an apology ever does. Yes. I woke to a quiet house and frost on the railing. Last night's outcome slip sat under a paperweight time-boxed rules, followed envelopes sealed. I logged the end time, underlined my note, children direct only, and set the 2 small envelopes labeled Card A and Card B on the blotter where I could see them and resist them. Coffee steamed beside my planner. I waited for noise and chose none. An automated call broke the hush. The district lunch account was negative. I opened the portal, added funds for the week, and printed the receipt with my name prominent. I filed it in the binder and sent a single line to Lorena lunch account, funded for the week, children covered. No commentary, no commas trying to soothe what facts must govern. Walking the long block later, the air was clean and cold. On their door, a yellow HOA notice lifted at one corner, tape crackling in the dryness. I did not slow. I noted date and time and kept moving the way a storm watcher marks the sky without calling it down. Near noon, Lorena texted, "I'm sorry things have been hard. It was kinder than the library, but it stepped around the words that mattered." I replied, "Please provide a written apology naming the phrase used at dinner. Then we proceed per terms." I pasted the subject from my prior email so we stood on the same page. A small heart came back. Small hearts don't sign anything. An hour later, Joran sent a photo outside a meeting hall, time-stamped near a GA schedule. The attendance line I'd provided was blank. I replied, "Please have the facilitator sign and date the verification. First signature activates Children Direct Support expansion." I archived the photo. Effort is not proof. Proof is proof. The afternoon tugged like a stitch that wants pulling. I picked up Card A and felt the unbroken seal. I pictured their pantry cereal that runs faster than a paycheck, apples that should not be bargaining chips. Then I pictured the ledger columns from my audit, the weeks I covered staples, and the same weeks padded with restaurants and bets, hidden in tidy little charges. I set Card A down unopened and placed a curbside order instead billed to me and delivered to their porch milk, bread, fruit, oatmeal. So, a nurse's note, rode home in a backpack, dental copay due Friday. I called the pediatric office, paid the balance direct to provider, and asked the receipt be sent to both of us. I forwarded it to Lorena with one line, copay covered. Please confirm appointment kept, and closed the thread before it could bloom into anything but logistics. At the grocery pickup, I waited in a numbered stall while carts rattled past and breath fogged in white puffs. Joran crossed the lot like weather. "So are you going to help or not?" he said, palms up to the parking lot jury. I stayed seated, held up my one-page fact sheet and tapped the box that lists the conditions. When these are met, the envelopes open. Until then, the children are covered vendor only. He shook his head, words gathering, but the attendant brought my bags, and I lifted the trunk with, On the way out of the lot, a neighbor I barely know lifted 2 fingers from her steering wheel in the old suburban salute. I returned it and felt the relief of ordinary manners. You can live a long time on small courtesies when the big ones go missing. At a red light, I called the school's nutrition office to confirm the payment posted. The woman on the line, tired but kind, said, "Yes, ma'am, it's on there now." I thanked her and asked about holiday closures, wrote dates down, and circled them twice. Back home, the printer warmed as if grateful to be asked. I filed the lunch receipt, the grocery confirmation, and the dental copay under today's date. I wrote one sentence on my planner and boxed it in pencil. Compassion funds, children. Accountability funds, adults. The line steadied me like a handrail on a dark stair. I moved the envelopes visible, untouched. They are not bait. They are a promise with a lock. Night came early. The porch light drew a small circle on the concrete where easier packages once landed. I brewed tea and set out 2 bowls and put one away. Old habits tug, but they don't get to drive. I checked the lunch portal balance green status active. I closed the laptop and let the house hum furnace refrigerator, the quiet metronome of my own breath. Near 10, a message from Lorena, appointment confirmed for 10 a.m. Thank you. Not an apology, but a kept tile in the mosaic. I replied. Noted, and turned the screen. Face down. Edges return to the room. Boundaries have a sound when they click. Before bed, I looked at the children's crayon drawing propped by the salt shaker. There I was small on the folding chair by the kitchen doorway. The coloring outside the lines was careful, hopeful. I touched the page and told the quiet, "You will have heat and lunch and teeth that do not ache, and the adults will meet the terms or they will meet their own winter." The words didn't echo. They settled where decisions live. Tomorrow will bring either the first signed line or another red envelope to their door. I will meet either with the same posture, present, documented, unwilling to mortgage my dignity. The envelopes will wait patient as good hinges. When the knock comes, and it will, this house will hold. I wake to an inbox subject line I haven't seen before attendance week 1. For a breath, I hold still, letting the coffee maker hiss and settle. I click. A scan opens 8 tidy boxes on a form I drafted, and the first line is filled. Date time of facilitator's signature that isn't a scribble. Location printed cleanly. I print at the machine humming like a steadying hand and write in my planner with my favorite fine point pen, line 1 received. I do not celebrate. I verify. I dial the hotline listed beneath the signature, the way a nurse checks a pulse before moving a patient. A recorded voice gives meeting times, then a human answers. I ask for the facilitator by name. She confirms she signed last night at 7:03. Attendance only, she adds even and practical. That's all I require, I say, and thank her. I hang up and place a sticky on the printed sheet. Confirmed by phone. No message left. It joins the folder with the case number, the certified receipt, the ledger. Proof sits quietly. I let it speak. Per my framework, one step unlocks another. I schedule a children-only grocery card to activate Friday if the second attendance line arrives. I draft but do not send the notice. Boundaries are bridges that appear only when the foot meets them. I set a reminder and close the calendar. At noon, I meet Lorena on a park bench where the cottonwoods shed pale strands that catch on our coats. She brings paper. I do not rescue her words. I read. The first lines sway around responsibility. Then finally, the phrase appears in ink. I am sorry for the words, "You're useless around here," spoken at dinner. No perfume on it. No if. I nod once and date the bottom corner. This completes one condition, I say. She exhales in a sound like snow slipping from a fence. We don't discuss money, we discuss pickup times and mittens. I take a photo for the record and slide the page into a rigid envelope. She leaves with her hands tucked deep in her sleeves. In the afternoon, I stand at the credit union window while a teller stamps a letter for Lorena's new account. Separate checking, a different card, effective dates listed. I don't take copies. I only site verify the headers and the name. I note in my planner, financial separation initiated monitor next cycle. Healthy walls let air move and keep weather out. I thank the teller and step back into the clean bite of November. Joanne texts that evening asking for a 3-way call with their lender's hardship desk. I agree to one call on speaker at my kitchen table paper under my palm. The representative is warm and procedural. Options arrive in measured language, a reduced plan, a brief forbearance budget, counseling a statement prohibiting gambling during the program. She promises an email checklist. I do not promise anything. When the call ends, I write a single line. Adult mortgage remains theirs. My role stays children direct. At 9, a voice memo pings. Joran's breath carries the small echo of a car interior. He admits what the ledger already told me. Bets placed when bills came due, fear like static in his jaw. He asks me to float one payment just to keep the roof. I listen once. I save it under a folder labeled Confessions. I do not reply. People confuse silence with stone. Mine is a ledger stone, flat, durable, telling weight and date. Morning brings another email and automated notice from the lender showing the hardship checklist opened and a counseling appointment booked. I print clip and place it behind the apology. A small architecture grows attendance line apology, separation letter lender step. I stand, stretch, breathe in the scent of paper and coffee and feel neither triumph nor doom. Only alignment. I open a fresh page titled Compliance Tracker and draw 4 columns: attendance apology, separation lender. Under attendance, I write a single 1. Under apology, I write received. Under separation, I write initiated. Under lender, I write checklist opened, counseling booked. I cap the pen and rest my hands on the table edge, feeling the faint groove the wood has worn beneath years of lists for sports days, birthday cakes, and furnace filters. Steadiness is not a feeling. It is a practice. In the afternoon, Lorena steps into my yard gate to return a casserole dish. Her eyes are clearer. "Thank you for keeping it about the kids," she says. I answer with a sentence the framework taught me. Compassion funds children. Accountability funds adults. She nods. We don't hug. We don't re-argue history. She asks whether the first grocery card will activate. When the second attendance line arrives, I say, and point to Friday on the porch calendar chalkboard. She traces the date with her eyes as if learning a new street. Later, I walk the block and sit for a moment where the sidewalk widens near the storm drain. The light is thin, the kind that makes everything honest. My phone stays in my pocket. I am not waiting for a message. I am waiting for proof. A sparrow lands, cocks its head, and lifts again. I stand and go home to a kitchen that smells like lemon oil and broth. Night settles. I review the day's stack one last time and slide it into the binder's back sleeve. On a small card, I write the only sentence I need to end this day. I reward proof, not promises, and only where the children live. I tuck the card in front, turn off the lamp, and let the house be quiet. Friday's mail lay like a test on my doormat. On top sat a certified envelope with my name in neat blue ink. I carried it to the kitchen, set it beside my planner, and slit the flap with the butter knife I keep for small ceremonies. Inside was the attendance sheet I'd issued 8 lines inked dates in order the facilitator's looping signature repeating like a calm heartbeat. I checked each line against the calendar squares I'd shaded as the weeks went by. Every square matched. I wrote 3 words on my tracker, S24 complete. Then a 4th line underneath, Children First Remains. An email pinged while the kettle hummed. The lender's address. Subject, hardship plan approved. I read it once slowly. 3-month reduced payment, counseling ongoing, affidavit of no gambling on file. I printed the PDF and slid it into the tab I'd labeled, "Their Solutions, Not Mine." In my notebook, I underlined, "Adult debt is adult work." The house was quiet in the good way, the kind that arrives when a choice holds long enough to grow roots. By noon, a text from Lorena, photos of confirmation screens, separate checking active, utilities split, new auto pays scheduled under her name, no emojis, no confetti. Noted, I replied. Separation executed. Paper would do what praise could not. I set the phone down and let the kettle click off again, though I hadn't meant to make more tea. Near 4 o'clock, a knock. When I opened the door, Lorena stood with her coat unzipped, cheeks pinked by the wind. In her gloved hand, the sealed grocery card I had labeled B. On top, a small envelope folded twice. "This is for you," she said, eyes low. The note inside named the dinner words without hedging. "You're useless around here," and apologized for saying them, for letting them ride the room and reach my bones. She did not ask for anything. I nodded. "Thank you for the clarity." I placed card B into my file drawer and wrote on the tab, "Returned unopened." That evening, another message came. "Would you come for soup on Sunday 1 hour? No money talk, the kids miss you." I looked at the sentence until the room steadied around it. 1 hour, I typed back. No money talk. Children at the table. I set a reminder to leave at 58, not 01. Boundaries feel strongest when kept before they're tested. Saturday, I walked past the community center as the GA meeting let out. People moved in 2s and 3s, winter coats, bumping paper cups, steaming. The facilitator met my eyes and gave a small, ordinary nod. I returned it. No words. A witness does not need a role bigger than the truth. Sunday smelled like tomato soup and laundry warm from the dryer. At their table, the children's laughter ricocheted off cabinets and settled into the room the way good sound does. The bowls were simple, the toast buttered. Lorena lifted her water glass. "Thank you for the boundaries," she said. "They helped." Joanne looked at me across the table. "I'm sorry. No preface, no bargain. I didn't ask for one. Keep doing the work I said. I'll keep the children steady." We ate in a quiet that felt earned, not fragile. Before I left, I slid a printed schedule across the counter: school lunches, seasonal clothing, medical co-pays dates, vendors, how to submit. Ongoing as long as respect holds, I said. No envelopes, no cash systems, not favors. The kids tugged on coats and showed me a new drawing: 4 sturdy chairs around a table, and one with a quilt draped over it. On the quilt, they'd drawn tiny squares, orange and blue. Back home, I framed the earlier drawing, the folding chair Truth, and hung it above my desk level with my eyes when I sit to pay a bill or write a note. Paper is small, but it endures. It gathers the days into lines you can trace with your finger when memory tries to wander. I opened my planner and wrote my final note to myself: relief without erasure, love without debt, boundaries without noise. Then I turned off the lamp and listened. The house was quiet in the good way again. No pleading, no buzzing, just the clean sound of a life that fits. I learned that love without boundaries turns into debt, but love with boundaries becomes shelter. I didn't win by shouting, I won by documenting, pausing the money and protecting the children. If you're facing disrespect, start small. Write things down. Pay vendors directly, and let proof, not promises, guide you. What would holding one clear boundary change for you this week? Have you ever chosen quiet action over loud arguments? If this story spoke to you, drop a 1 or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't say why, I'm listening. And if you want more true human stories, please subscribe to the channel.